Good afternoon, California Patriots. My name is John Pomeroy, and I'm the Director of Outreach for Yes California. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to host a Q&A with all of the people that are here, support of this movement. But we have to discuss something that has happened in our political system that has yet to be held accountable for. And that is the robbing of Bernie Sanders in the 2016 Democratic primary. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a fact. And if you deny this fact, that is to deny the federal courts of Florida, where this was presented, a lawsuit from people like us who were robbed of their Democratic choice in the primary. The state of Florida and the federal court of Florida made it very clear in the DNC fraud lawsuit that they had ample evidence to show that Bernie Sanders was cheated in this campaign. There has been no accountability for this, and this is unacceptable. And we that were active Bernie supporters in 2015, working very diligently to get him elected, making hundreds of thousands of phone calls, knocking on hundreds of thousands of doors, holding events, canvassing, rallies. You saw tens of thousands of people coming out to support this man, and we're seeing it again. But yet there's no accountability for what happened last time. So what do we do with this information? Everybody's acting like it's business as usual. Right? The Democratic National Committee said in a federal court of law that if they wanted to pick their candidate in a back room smoking cigars, that they could do that. And yet here we are again in another primary season, and they're up to their same shenanigans. First they ignore him, then they smear him, and now finally the Des Moines Register poll for Iowa shows him with a 5-point lead. And now finally, the establishment media is covering it. In my opinion, that means that they're afraid of the accountability that's about to be rained down from above. But still, there's been no accountability. So as an active Bernie supporter from 2015 who feels that I was wronged, I make a plea to the people of California to prepare for the same thing when it happens again. They bring Joe Lieberman out of the mothballs to talk about a brokered convention. They force Joe Biden down our throat when the man can't even string together a coherent sentence. It's absolutely horrific what is happening in our world, not just in America, but abroad, and because of, in large part, American imperialism. So we as Californians know this. Hannah very clearly showed 9 million people support an independent California, and 6 million more are on the fence. That's 15 million Californians that are not against it. When everybody starts to realize how popular this is, there's no way they can stop it. An independent California is an inevitability if we continue down this path of corruption and shame that Washington, D.C. has brought upon all of us. So I'm supposed to talk about the Green New Deal. And this is something that a lot of people are very excited about, myself included, but it doesn't go far enough. And California's Green New Deal goes further than the federal Green New Deal that AOC and Ilhan Omar and Ro Khanna and all the Bernie-crats are supporting, but it doesn't go far enough. So what I would like to do today is look at Assembly Joint Resolution number 7, which is California's Green New Deal, and address where its shortcomings are. I can say definitively that everything that is in here is something that I feel strongly about and I agree with. However, it doesn't go far enough. Where the biggest difference, in my opinion, is between California's Green New Deal and the United States Green New Deal is in the Healthy Soils Initiative. This is a perfect example of where California values digress from American values. This is a focus on the macro level of things, the interrelationship between all things, and why I think that this doesn't go far enough. We cannot talk about water rights without talking about human rights, because we are water. Water is life. Mini Wachoni, they say in Standing Rock, as thousands of protesters stand against an imperial government trying to force oil on a pipeline that shouldn't even be there in the first place. This is a digression away from California values. We stand with indigenous peoples all over the world, and we demand that their voices be included in anything that's going to be called a Green New Deal. Because without nature's rights, nothing else matters. We've seen precedents set by the Maori in New Zealand, who recently won human rights for their river. Now, if you do anything to the river that's harmful, that's breaking the law. What's beautiful about what's happening in New Zealand is they're holding our salmon. New Zealand has California's salmon. Yeah. And I don't mean figuratively. They literally have our salmon. Chief Kayleen Sisk of the Winnemem-Wintu, who ran for assembly in California last cycle and nearly won, has been fighting for the rights of her river since she was a wee lass. And what she has accomplished is legendary. The salmon of the Winnemem-Wintu were taken to New Zealand for safekeeping until we're successful in restoring her river and bringing them back. Yeah. This is something that people with myopia cannot understand. If all you're concerned about is the water that you need to put on your agricultural land, then you're not gonna understand why the little smelt are so important. People get all up in arms about the smelt having more rights than the farmers. That's missing the point. The smelt is what they call an indicator species. It's a canary in the coal mine for the health of our environment, and something that California does better than the United States, but not good enough. That's right. So what we have to do is take that extra that's in the California Green New Deal and make it extra. Okay? Soil health is about biology. Biology is about inherent rights. Inherent rights are indigenous rights, and indigenous rights are human rights. That's right. That's right. So there is no separation of these things. Thank you very much. So California's Healthy Soils Initiative uses hard science that those in DC like to oppose. This hard science makes it very clear that healthy living soils can reverse climate change. We've taken carbon out of the ground and burned it and put it into the atmosphere. The buffer, which is our ocean, has taken that extra carbon and absorbed it, and now we have the highest acidity in the ocean's recorded history. And we have the highest CO2 content in our atmosphere since the dinosaurs' extinction. So what we're dealing with here is cataclysmic. If you want to talk about the biggest threat to humanity, it's right there in black and white. And you can deny the science, you can talk about alternative facts and fake news, but the reality remains. The biology doesn't lie. We're experiencing mass extinction die-offs. Humanity is collectively speeding towards its own extinction. And it's like Darwin said, It's not the smartest or the fastest or the strongest species that survives. It's the one that adapts most quickly to change. We can sit around and argue about minutia. We can talk about the DNC versus the GOP. We can keep having these ridiculous conversations, or we can work on a solution. And the Green New Deal is the only option that's been presented to us that's viable. But it doesn't go far enough. So we in California demand that the Green New Deal include inherent rights, nature's rights, indigenous rights. Thank you. It needs to include a clause about the importance of education, because we cannot do these things with an uneducated populace. How do we expect to have a democracy when you have a world full of people that don't even know the issues, that vote on a color scheme? This is basic kindergarten democracy. We have never had a democracy for everyone in this country. And as long as we continue saying that we have, we're doing everyone a disservice. We live in an oligarchy. We live in a corporatocracy where money corrupts everything. And until millions of people stand up and say enough is enough, nothing's going to change. Whether you like Bernie Sanders or not is irrelevant. His message is clear. The issues are clear. Whether you like AOC or not is irrelevant. Whether you like Ilhan Omar or not is irrelevant. It's identity politics at its worst, but it presents us with an opportunity to see the solutions for what they are, embarrassingly simple. Yeah. So I want to field questions that anyone might have, and I welcome everyone to go to our website, and I want to present the elevator pitch, if you will, for California independence. First and foremost is a return of all federal land to the tribes of California, unequivocally. Upon that, we can have our independence. We can have a plurinational governance structure that includes both the technology and Western thought with indigenous wisdom. Anyone that doesn't like it can have our star on the flag and join the state of Jefferson. That's right. Whom we support. Yeah. We don't support everyone in the movement. There's some wackos for sure. But their idea is real, and it's based on a feeling that they've been double-crossed by their government, which they have. So you cannot dismiss them without engaging them on a personal level. So no solution is going to be happy for everyone. But we don't care about everyone. We care about the majority. All right? So with that, I'd like to take some questions if anyone has them. Shankar.
So yeah, you use an awful lot of science and mumbo jumbo that seems pretty frightening to the average right-winger. I would imagine we had a discussion here about 3 weeks ago with some right-wingers who don't believe any of the science. They don't believe in any of the basic, scientific methodology. They don't. It's just garbage. It's hokey pokey. How do you expect to convince that voter bloc of the importance of this? And the second part is that voter bloc happens to be the Jefferson state people, I believe, too. I mean, they just happen to be falling into that. And I have another thing about the Jeffersons, but how do you plan to convince these people?
We don't have to convince them. They represent a statistical minority. Half of Americans that are eligible to vote don't. So that's 50% off the block right away. The other half is split pretty evenly because of the dualistic system that we have in Republicans and Democrats. Any third party is marginalized by a vote for blank is a vote for blank. You know the story. That's also irrelevant. No one believes that 4.5 million Californians wanted Hillary Clinton to be president. Right. What we all believe and know to be true is that 4.5 million Californians didn't want Donald Trump to be president. And she was the only option that we were presented. That shouldn't be up for debate. That's pretty clear from a statistical perspective. So we have of the 25% of people who voted for Hillary Clinton, I'd be willing to bet that a vast majority of them only did so to vote against Donald Trump, continuing the cycle of voting against what you don't want instead of for what you do, which is absurd. So what do we go from there? We go to the Republicans, right? How many people were pissed off that Bernie was robbed?
Entire state.
How many people just wanted to throw a wrench into the whole thing?
Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many people didn't go to the poll because Bernie was robbed? And it's just another example of the way our system fails us.
Yeah.
And how simple is it to fix? Easy. You make voting a national holiday.
Absolutely.
You have ranked choice voting.
Ranked choice,
You mandate multi-party debates. You remove restrictions that allow people to vote. Like if I want to vote for Bernie, I have to register as a Democrat. Fuck the Democrats.
Yeah.
All they've done is cheat us. And yes, they're better than the GOP. Yes, they're better than the GOP on many levels. But they're still cheaters. And that was made explicitly clear in 2016. So to answer your question, the same is true for the voting bloc for Trump. A vast majority of those people just didn't want Hillary Clinton. Right? So we see all these spin doctors working to present a fraction of the reality. People don't like Donald Trump. They don't like the system that put him in power.
Yeah.
The electoral college, gerrymandering, voter roll purges.
Mm-hmm.
Like the list goes on, and we all know what those things are. So,
The second half of my question, the Jefferson statement too. You're right. They do deserve their own, but the combined GDP, I think the 21 counties that make up Jefferson is about $3 billion. So if they were a state, it'd be a $3 billion state. The next state up is Vermont, Burning State, which is about $30 billion. So there's a huge disparity between the state of Jefferson and the next, GDP net state would be Vermont. I mean, does Jefferson? I know the Jeffersonians don't know this, but if they come to realize that they are so minuscule as compared, not size wise, but
financially.
How do you expect it to survive financially with $3 billion? I mean, there's just no.
Well, money means different things to different people. I'm a farmer. I got dirty nails, right? I work with my animals every day. I don't need a lot of money to survive. I grow my own food. That's the Jeffersonian way. These are pioneers. Most of them want smaller government. Most of them just want to be left alone. Most people don't want to pay for car insurance when the biggest threat to their vehicle is a deer on the highway. It's absurd that we're still having these conversations. Jefferson can do a lot with what they have, and I, for one, would like to support them in their independence. They get their statehood, and I think the new nation of California would be willing to support them because they're feeding us. They're the ones that are growing our food. We need to educate them about healthy soils and the importance of a polyculture, getting away from monocropping, getting away from these constructs of people saying we need massive farms to feed the world. Nothing could be further from the truth. We waste 40% of the food that we grow in this country is wasted. And half of that is during transport. So if we localize our food systems, even someplace like Los Angeles, which is a metropolitan area. Look what Ron Finley did in East LA, right? Or South Central, I mean. He's the gangster gardener, right? Plant some shit, right? He used the greenways in front of his street to grow food that the whole community eats.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not impossible. It's actually possible, and it needs to happen if we're going to successfully survive as a species. Yes.
Can you speak a little bit specifically about AB7 and specifically what it do for transportation? Because as I see it, that's like the probably the single biggest problem with, for California's impact on.
It's
on
true.
climate change.
It's true. It's huge. You can't drive anywhere without seeing pollution just spewing out of cars. In my opinion, hydrogen is the solution to that.
Yeah, well, what does AB7 call for?
AB7 calls for green tech. It applies for green jobs, solar, geothermal, wind power, electric. But it's not going far enough. What we saw in Bolivia is a direct response to what we're seeing in Tesla and other battery technology. You have to have lithium in order to have that battery. And in order to get lithium, you have to mine and destroy the earth.
Does it increase support for public transportation, for instance?
Oh, 100%. It's in there. Public transportation is in there. And Alameda County, Oakland, they run hydrogen buses. The AC Transit runs hydrogen buses. These buses are run on hydrogen, which is generated from solar power, which takes water and hydrolyzes it and splits it into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen goes into the atmosphere. We're all happy. And hydrogen burns, and the byproduct is water. So everybody wins. And there's no destructive portion involved.
All the buses in my town are CNG.
Right. They say clean natural gas. It burns clean, right? But how do you get it out of the ground? Let me ask you.
I said that it does. And
Yeah,
it's
fracking.
But also, San Diego is buying battery buses for the first time. We're seeing those.
Yeah, and batteries again. That's destructive technology.
No, look at it this way. It's a way to get electricity in our transportation system without going to the expense of overhead wires. That's the ultimate.
No, I mean, there's validity to that. It's better than burning fossil fuel, but it still requires destructive technology. We have the technology that we do not need to do these destructive things.
I'm saying that
Honda, Toyota, Hyundai, they all have hydrogen fuel cell vehicles that are available right now in California and Hawaii. This technology is not something in the future, it's right now, and it's the best thing that we have to combat climate change. And the best part is, you drive through I-5, you're going through Bakersfield, what do you smell? Cows. Miles and miles of cows. What do? They eat corn. How do we get corn? Industrial ag. How do we get industrial ag? We have big tractors running on diesel and using synthetic inputs and genetically engineering the crops to be resistant to the poison that you're putting on to kill everything else. This is unacceptable, and it's not sustainable. And the solutions are very clear. So there's no room for debate, in my opinion, about the solutions. They're very clear. Where the minutia comes in, that's where the new government of California comes up and answers people's questions.
I just point out that I would say that buses with electric batteries are definitely a more efficient way to use lithium than sticking a bunch of cells in every single car. That's not suggesting.
Oh no, for sure. Like I said, 100%. This is way better than what we currently have, but it's not good enough. And we shouldn't practice incrementalism like the Queen of England suggests. Let's take baby steps. Those days are over, lady. All right? The Crown, as far as I'm concerned, is the first reality TV show. And it paved the way for Donald Trump. And what we saw in Scotland today is an undeniable shot across the bow. Yes, California came directly from Yes Scotland. After their first independence referendum failed, we borrowed it with their permission. Now Yes 2 is back, and you can see our flag everywhere in Scotland today. This is the reality of our situation. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah.
What is the efficiency of hydrogen automobiles and stuff like that? Is it as efficient as a gas or electric car?
It's more efficient, actually. The 0 to 60 on a semi-truck that's running with hydrogen and pulling a 300,000 pound load is 25% faster than a diesel. right? And what's coming out of the stack is steam, right? It's a no-brainer. Like you can't even begin to try and convince me that it's not the future. It's here right now. And there is a hydrogen fuel station in Oakland right now. And you know, I see the cars driving by and I see water coming out of their tailpipe and I just get happy inside. I think there is hope for us. We got to stop fighting about the minutia and the nonsense and move forward.
And how do you regenerate the hydrogen? Would be pumps, like gas pumps that you would refill?
There's multiple ways to create it. Hydrogen is number one on the periodic table. It's the most widely occurring element in the universe that we know. And it comes from water. And you can get it from salt water. And all you have to do is electrolysis. And all the greenhouse gases that we're worried about, they all have a hydrogen molecule. Right? That hydrogen molecule can be captured and stored in a propane tank. The technology is already there. We don't even need new technology. We just need to convert the current technology. And Buckminster Fuller, if you're familiar, he said it really clear back in the day. It's very clear. We need a transition from machines of death to machines of life. Instead of dropping bombs, we should be dropping trees. Instead of spraying pesticides from crop dusters, we should be spraying compost tea. We should be spraying fermented plant juice. We should spread mycelium. We should nurture living soil, nurture the environment that feeds us. So it's not bad enough that the food is being sprayed with poison. It's also nutrient deficient and causes problems in your gut microbiome, which we're only starting to learn. So we can get stuck in blind patriotism and nationalism and the right and all the nonsense, or we can work on the solutions. And I, for one, advocate for working on the solutions instead of constantly fighting about the problems. Any other questions?
I just wanted to follow up. How do you suggest convincing people when the oil companies have so much clout in this country that they would squash? They've squashed hydrogen before. They squashed it. They wanted to squash electric. How do you propose convincing? We don't even hear this in the news. Hydrogen, people don't even know what the hell that is.
Yeah, of course.
So how do you educate people that this could be a solution when the oil companies are gonna do their best to negate the benefits of it?
Short answer,
Yeah.
CALEXIT. Short answer, an educational system that works for the people and not for the corporations and the institutions that benefit from having an ignorant populace. I was a public school teacher. My Uncle Mike was the vice president of the UTLA when he was a school teacher here in Los Angeles. He's here in support. The UTLA was the first teacher organization to endorse Bernie Sanders. Chicago teachers follow the lead, and it's been like dominoes ever since. Teachers associations all over the country have endorsed him. Teachers are the number one contributor to his campaign. I cannot support Bernie Sanders the way I did in 2015 until there's a reckoning, until there's accountability for what happened. And only now that he's reached a point where he's in the lead can he start to address those things. I hated that he didn't call foul, that he went and stumped for Hillary Clinton. But I supported him because he's an old man and he knows. He's been in D.C. for a long time. If he would have called foul, his career would have been over. The political revolution been over. AOC and Ilhan Omar and Ro Khanna, they all would not be where they are. They wouldn't be there. We wouldn't have a Green New Deal. We wouldn't be talking about any of this stuff if he had called foul. So he fell on his sword for us.
Yep.
And he's only now in a position where he can actually call foul. And if they cheat him again, our only option is independence. Thank you very much.